So I've made a few videos on Gundam now, and I know most people on my channel are here for Shonen Jump content, but maybe those few Gundam videos I've made have intrigued you. You might also be someone confused about where to start with Gundam. How do you tackle such a gargantuan franchise with so many entries? And that's why we're here today, to talk about Gundam, go through its various timelines, explain what it's all about, and where the best place to begin might be. To get straight to the point, Mobile Suit Gundam is a sci-fi drama mecha show, and while the robots are cool and very varied, and a big part of the show, it's primarily character focused, so don't let some of the fans scare you off if you think it might be too mech or military focused. I promise Gundam has some truly emotional storytelling that rewards you the more series you watch. Mostly anyway. And if you do get interested in the mecha, which you likely will, then treat it as a big cherry on top. One of the most confusing things for new people getting into Gundam is the various timelines and flashy series names, like how does Gundam Double Zeta connect to Gundam Unicorn or Gundam the Witch from Mercury? And while there are a lot of shows and timelines, I promise you it's not as complicated as it might seem. The biggest thing you have to understand is you can split these timelines into two major camps: the Universal Century timeline, Gundam's main timeline, and the various alternate universes it has, some of which are standalone and great places to start. A lot of Gundam timeline explanations and where to start guides tend to focus on the Universal Century first, but I think that's where people get confused as it has so many entries. So let's look at some of the alternate universes first, go through what they're generally about, and if they're a good place to start for you. While we go through the video, I'm going to give each entry a mark out of 3 stars. 3 stars means it's a great place to begin. 2 might not be the best, but it shouldn't confuse you too much, and I'd still recommend it. 1 star isn't what I'd personally recommend, but it could work for you, and no stars means I absolutely do not recommend you start there. I hope that's simple and easy to understand because we're going to kick things off with the most recent Gundam series, Mobile Suit Gundam The Witch from Mercury. Beginning in fall of 2022 and ending this year in the spring of 2023, The Witch from Mercury is a great starting point if you like modern anime. It has crisp visuals and some excellent character designs, and most importantly, it's completely standalone, with a few small caveats. Before you watch Witch from Mercury, be aware it has a single prologue episode, effectively making the series a total of 25 episodes, a nice smaller length than most Gundam shows, and one that might be better to ease you into the series. Since this is a brand new Ultimate Universe, the Ad Stella timeline, there isn't much supplementary material yet, aside from a short story and a manga called Vanitas Heart that's still ongoing. This is also a good time to tell you that most parts don't worry about the Gundam manga if you're getting into the series. There are some meaningful connections there, but nothing crucial. I will touch on some manga throughout this video, but I'll try to bring it up as optional content or just when it's relevant to mention. As I said before, it being a brand new alternative universe, The Witch from Mercury is maybe a good Gundam show to start if you want to get into the series, as you can look forward to future content in this timeline. It's not a guarantee, but from my knowledge, The Witch from Mercury has done very well, so we'd likely see more media come up in the Ad Stella timeline at some point in the future. As we go through each series, I'll sometimes bring up some of the main features of each show to give you an idea of if it's for you or not. For The Witch from Mercury, if you like the idea of mecha mixed with a school setting, it might be for you. Don't expect high school shenanigans, clubs, and the usual tropes though, but younger characters working together, forming bonds, with a bit more downtime and happy moments compared to most Gundam. To contrast with that, The Witch from Mercury is also adept at throwing you a lot of gut punches too, so you'll enjoy it if you like emotional stories that might make you cry, as well as romance. Most Gundam dip their toes into romantic plotlines, but The Witch from Mercury has one of the best and sweetest ones, which will make your heart soar. And a massive plus to the LGBTQ+ crowd is it's a lesbian one, which has formed a very friendly community of new Gundam fans for the series. If mechs are your thing, Witch from Mercury has that too, in multiple mech designers to design mobile suits for specific factions in universe, giving you a massive variety of different ones to fall in love with. Finally, a general overview. If you like the sound of corporate war using mecha, mixed in with students attending a space school with hints of Shakespeare, then Mobile Suit Gundam The Witch from Mercury is undoubtedly for you. and in general is a great place to start, with me giving it a full 3 stars. Since I know the majority of returning viewers and subscribers are here for the Shonen Jump content, our next entry will cover the battle-focused Mobile Fighter G Gundam. Beginning in the spring of 1994 and having a total of 49 episodes, it's Gundam's very first alternative universe that took a very different spin on things, it being influenced by shonen manga, notably Ring Nikakuro, a familiar name if you watched my History of Shonen Jump series. Being an older show, some might find its art and animation a bit dated, but it's also extremely charming and really good at points. You'll likely really like it if you grew up with older anime like Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, and even Dragon Ball, that specifically being a large point of comparison for people, often saying G Gundam is the Dragon Ball of Gundam, and I can really see why. In G Gundam, every country is represented by their own Gundam, and every few years they engage in a massive Gundam fight tournament, with the winning country getting to represent the galaxy for the next 4 years. Unlike a lot of other Gundams, the show is less militaristic and more like your typical shonen fighting anime, with a lot of the fights being more one-on-ones, focusing a lot more on melee, big robots punching and kicking each other. Speaking of robots, there's a lot of cool and wacky designs in G Gundam, which you might have seen flying around the internet, like the Tequila Gundam, Nobel Gundam, or the Nether Gundam. It's exciting to see all of these while watching, as you wonder, well, what does France's Gundam look like, for example, and eventually you'll see that. It also has some of my personal favourite Gundam designs, one of them being the Shining Gundam, which can do stuff like this. If that gave you goosebumps and you felt like you wanted to shout Shining Finger along with Domon, then this is a show for you. G Gundam is completely standalone as well, with only a few small old manga adaptations from my knowledge, nothing you have to worry about. If a martial arts focused Gundam with shonen tropes is something you're interested in, you'll likely really like G Gundam. It's not basic though, and don't let people tell you it lacks the emotional weight or complexity of other Gundam shows, as there's plenty of heartfelt moments throughout, with Domon being a really well developed and lovable protagonist. It also does touch on similar themes to the Universal Sentry, so I don't think it's as big a departure as most people say it is. But that said, it is one of the more atypical Gundam shows, and there's no other series quite like it, so I'll be giving it a 2 out of 3 stars, a fine place to begin, especially if you like shonen manga and anime. New Mobile Report Gundam Wing, or just Gundam Wing, was Gundam's second attempt at an alternative universe, it being one of the most popular Gundam in the US, notably due to Toonami. Starting in the spring of 1995, a week after G Gundam's conclusion, it also is a bigger series at 49 episodes long. All the same applies with G Gundam to Wing if you like older styles of animation, with Wing looking particularly good at times, although it has a noticeably more moodier atmosphere. Wing is also very serious in how it depicts its events, often going deep into political monologues about the world, its factions, and the nature of peace. To contrast with this, the rest of the show follows 5 young space terrorists piloting Gundam and mowing down legions of mobile suits in their various missions. The suit designs here are a favourite of many as well, with the Wing, Death Scythe and Tallgeese often coming up in conversation for favourite mobile suits, something you might want to consider when getting into the series. I want to do my best at not being too biased when talking about all these series. I do find Wing a bit up its own ass sometimes, with it being intentionally confusing or vague in its storytelling, although some might like the insane and over-the-top political schemes the various villains of Wing pull off. Wing isn't entirely standalone, with its sequel Gundam Wing Endless Waltz being a great capstone of the series, piling all that's good about Gundam Wing into one 90-minute movie or 3 separate 30-minute OVA episodes. I'd recommend it in movie form though, as it really works well in that format. It's even Christmas themed if you'd like to line it up and watch around the holiday season. There's also Gundam Wing Operation Meteor, which is just a recut version of the show split into 4 hour-long episodes, which I wouldn't recommend as Gundam Wing is confusing enough at times, and I can't imagine losing more context. For manga, there's a lot of Wing side content, with some people saying that Gundam Wing Endless Waltz Glory to the Losers is good. I can't verify that as I haven't read it, but if you end up loving the series, check it out I guess. Again, not mandatory by any means. There's also the light novel called Frozen Teardrop, set after the events of Wing, which I think is also translated. Mainly though, it's just the 49 episodes of Wing and then the Endless Waltz film. If you want a show that will fill you with 90s nostalgia, has a brooding atmosphere, plenty of space politics, massive Gundam battles and drama, then Gundam Wing might be a good entry point for you. I personally think it's a little obtuse and not the best the series has to offer, so I'll be giving it a 2 out of 3 stars. By all means though, if it sounds entertaining, start with Wing. Beginning in the fall of 2002, Gundam Seed marks Gundam's first entry into the digital era of anime and is a fan favourite for many, especially in Japan, from my understanding. At 50 episodes in length, Gundam Seed is one of the longer series, also having a direct continuation in Gundam Seed Destiny, adding another 50 episodes to Gundam Seed's universe, for better or for worse. You'll likely be more into Seed if you like anime of the early 2000s, with it definitely feeling similar in vibes to Code Geass for me. It's also a soft retelling of the Universal Century, so it's designed with new viewers in mind and to be a Gundam show for the modern age at the time. There's also a lot of teen melodrama in Seed, lots of angst alongside your usual Gundam stuff, mech battles, politics, intrigue, and a war between Earth and space. I know to some the melodrama might be a turn-off, but for others you might enjoy that earnestly or for its potential cringe factor. While some characters are definitely likable, their development is questionable though, especially when we get to see Destiny, which I can't not mention as it's often said to be the worst Gundam has to offer, ruining its characters' plotlines and being an overall mess. It really wasn't a fun watch for me. If you do want to start with the Cosmic Era, it isn't a bad start by any means, as it's a fine entry point into Gundam. Just be aware that the quality isn't the best. Other than Seed and Seed Destiny, there's the short 3-episode OVA series Mobile Suit Gundam Seed Stargazer that doesn't seem to have much bearing on the plot of either, so you can safely watch it whenever you like, although you might want to save it until you've finished Destiny. There's also the compilation OVAs of Seed and Seed Destiny, which you could watch instead of the entire show, but usually these special editions or compilation movies aren't worth it, as they're heavily trimmed down and might leave you confused. Mobile Suit Gundam Freedom will come out next year though, being a sequel to Destiny and a feature-length film, so the Cosmic Era is still seeing new entries. So, to recap, you watch 50 episodes of Seed, then 50 episodes of Seed Destiny, then you can slot in Stargazer wherever you like, but after Destiny you have the Gundam Seed Freedom movie, whenever that comes out next year. For having a very bad sequel that I honestly don't recommend people watch, I'd give the original Gundam Seed a 2 out of 3 stars, a fine starting point, but its continuation will likely leave you disappointed. The fall of 2008 would see Mobile Suit Gundam 00 begin, being split into 2 seasons of 25 episodes each, 50 in total. As well as having the 2 seasons, to cap everything off, there's the movie Awakening of a Trailblazer, so all in all this is another smaller alternative universe with a bit of extra content. 00 is a fan favourite series among Gundam veterans and newbies alike, with a more distinct modern feeling to its story, taking inspiration from post-9/11 geopolitics. A lot of the conflict actually focuses itself on Earth, unlike Gundam's usual space versus Earth storyline it usually pursues. I'd probably compare it closest to Wing, with a more modern aesthetic and a clearer story and message. It even feels like it takes some pot shots at Wing and its characters with how it tackles ideas of peace. 00 is a great beginner entry for introducing a new Gundam universe with plenty of interesting characters, great music, and mobile suit designs, which I think most people can enjoy. And if you're confused about the Universal Century or think its animation and art look a bit dated, 00 is maybe the best way to test the waters on Gundam for you, as I feel it has everything good Gundam has to offer, and it might get you interested in some of the later series after finishing. Easily 00 is a great place to begin, and I'd give it a full 3 out of 3 stars. Gundam Age came out in 2011 and was set to be a collaboration between Gundam and the game studio Level 5, the people behind Professor Layton, Yokai Watch and Inazuma 11, a video game studio I personally love. This gives it a very unique art style with a lot of quirky characters which on one hand I love as a fan of Level 5, but it leads to Age having a very different and more child-friendly feel to it. Despite that, it is your usual Gundam series full of mobile suit battles, character drama, and the occasional death. Specifically though, Age focuses on family, separating its 49 episodes into 3 generations, each following a different protagonist over the course of 100 years, a really interesting concept for a Gundam show. Age is entirely standalone too, with no other supplementary media other than some manga which you can ignore. So if you like the sound of the generational concept and the idea of a slightly more child-friendly Gundam, Age might be for you. It's often looked down upon and I can understand why, as it's not the best, but it is decently engaging and presents a set of interesting ideas, especially through its exploration of intergenerational conflict. If you have children, or God forbid you're like 12 and watching this, maybe Gundam Age is a good fit for you, and I'd give it a 2 out of 3 stars. You won't be confused watching Age, I just don't think it's the best Gundam has to offer. My personal start with Gundam was 2015's Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans. Having 2 seasons of 25 episodes each, it would again be a 50 episode series. Set in the post-disaster timeline, it's currently standalone with no real extra content aside from a mobile game and a manga adaptation. Other than that, it's a straightforward 50 episodes. If you're looking for a mecha series that's a bit more gritty with a slight post-apocalyptic vibe, then IBO might be a great place to start with it focusing on a group of young ex-child soldiers who start up their own private military company. Seeing them gradually grow their numbers and acquire more mobile suits is a big part of the show, with them only starting with one at the beginning, the terrifying Gundam Barbatos. The battles are some of the most tense and hard-hitting in the franchise, with a lot of them devolving into big melees, ranged weapons being a sort of rarity in this universe. IBO takes inspiration from Yakuza and gangster-style stories, so expect a lot of drama, grit, and a bit more darkness than your average Gundam show. I'm surprised I don't have more to say on IBO since it's one of my favourites, but you can describe it very succinctly, and if this take on Gundam sounds interesting to you, then I think it's an excellent place to begin, and for that I'm going to give it 3 stars. Gundam Build Fighters takes a different approach to Gundam, focusing in more on the Gunpla aspect of things, the Gundam building side. And if you're unfamiliar with Gunpla, it's the plastic model kits for Gundam. These are kits you can build yourself with a trusty set of nippers. It's a lot of fun actually, and something you can look forward to doing if you get into Gundam. Build Fighters is actually more of a subset of Gundam shows. From my understanding though, aside from the direct season continuations, you can watch both of them in any order you'd like. So that's Build Fighters and Build Divers. Build Fighters though, being the first, follows the adorable Sei and Reiji as they build models and fight with them in the style of something similar to your Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Beyblade kind of kids battle anime. It has a ton of references to old shows as well, and all of the model kits are real from the shows. So if you've watched a lot of Gundam shows, you'll see a lot of returning Gundam from all types of show. That said, they're super beginner friendly as well, and you don't need to watch any Gundam beforehand. If this sounds like a good entry point for you, it's also only 25 episodes long, so it's less of a time commitment than some of the bigger series. Gundam Build Fighters has a really nice story, with the friendship that develops between Sei and Reiji being really good and well done. If you'd rather start with a show about building model kits and flashy over-the-top fights over the standard space drama that Gundam usually is, then Build Fighters might make a great place for you to start. So I'll give Build Fighters a 2 out of 3 stars, as it's a little different than most series, and I think you'd get a bit more out of it if you watch some older Gundam shows first. Now on to the rest of the Build series. Expect similar things to Gundam Build Fighters. Build Fighters Try is a sequel which follows a new cast of characters and shifts to 3-on-3 battles rather than 1v1s, I think it's probably safer to say that you should watch the original Build Fighters first though, and like its prequel, it's only 25 episodes long. There's also the Build Fighters Battlelog, which you can watch after you finish both series, Build Fighters GM's Counterattack, which you can watch after finishing the original Build Fighters, and Build Fighters Tri Island Wars, which you can watch after Tri. Although all of these are shorter OVAs, so I'd consider them more of a bonus than anything. Build Divers is a completely separate build series that you can watch standalone, also 25 episodes long, but instead of the previous tournament setting, we would delve into a new MMO-like one, separating the Fighters and Divers series a bit. It would then see a sequel in Build Divers Re-Rise, having 2 seasons of 13 episodes each, following a new cast of characters. Likely though, it's probably better to watch the original Divers before you watch Re-Rise. Also, bear in mind that there's a Battlelog for the Divers series too. We're not quite done with the Build series though, as currently Gundam Build Metaverse is releasing.
Nice job, team.
A 3-part OVA featuring characters from all the Build shows. It's not super necessary to watch, but I wouldn't recommend it as a starting point. Just watch it when you feel like it after you've watched a few of the Build shows. Although not directly connected to Fighters or Divers, Gunpla Builders Beginning G is a short 3-episode OVA totaling 40 minutes that's basically a precursor to the Build series. Not something I'd recommend as your first watch either, but a neat piece of Gundam media you might want to watch prior to watching the Build series or after it, if you want more Gunpla focused content. Hopefully with that, the Build series is a little more digestible to you. Just remember, starting at Build Fighters or Build Divers is a good bet if you like how those series sound. After War Gundam X is one of the least watched and discussed Gundam shows, often being overlooked, and that includes by me, as I haven't yet finished it, but I am in the process of watching it. Beginning in 1996, it ran for 39 episodes, ending earlier than supposed to, but from what I hear, it wraps up quite nicely, with the setting being the most post-apocalyptic out of any Gundam show. It has a great cast of characters that feel very distinct from all the other series I've seen too. It also has no supplementary media tied to it other than some manga, so you can simply enjoy it on its own. Gundam X does feature some ideas and concepts present in the Universal Century timeline though, like new types, so it might be worth checking out the original series first, although it's not mandatory. But that, coupled with the lack of discussion of Gundam X in the Gundam fandom as a whole, is going to make me give it 2 out of 3 stars, as you might want to talk about Gundam X after you finished it with friends or people online, but find nobody has really seen it. If it does sound interesting to you though, absolutely check it out, as it's one of the more underrated series.
Turn A, Gundam.
Turn A is supposedly one of the best Gundam shows, in part because of how it pays tribute to the franchise as a whole, and most people consider watching it last in their Gundam journey, me included, so I can't comment too much on it, as I haven't watched it yet. Coming in at 50 episodes long and starting in 1999, it doesn't have as much Mobile Suit Battles as its peers apparently, and seems to have a very unique setting and cast of characters, with it connecting to some of the older shows before it somehow. And as such, I don't think it would be a good starting point for new fans, and should likely be one of the last ones you watch. For this reason, I'll be giving Turn A 0 stars, as it's probably not the Gundam series you should begin with. Now that all those alternate universes are out of the way, let's delve into Gundam's main timeline, the Universal Century. Starting at the very beginning with Mobile Suit Gundam is one of your best options. After all, it's the beginning of this massive franchise. It's often called Gundam 79 or 0079. It's the first entry of the franchise and started in the year 1979 and has a total of 43 episodes. Alternatively, there are also 3 compilation movies that are regarded as a decent option if you'd rather watch them over the main series, which cover the most important parts the series covers. It's a great show though, and while the animation could be dated by modern standards, I find it especially charming, and I think more people should give it a try. It holds up surprisingly well, especially with its plot. There's a reason Gundam is so beloved and is as big as it is today, and that's because its first entry was an amazing show. If you like old styles of animation or would like to see some classic anime, if you want to see where Gundam began, where all the older mobile suits and the origin of the Universal Century are, the original Gundam is a great place to start. For those reasons, I don't think it can be anything else other than 3 stars, especially because it is the de facto place to start and it's probably the series most people will tell you to watch first. Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam is a direct continuation of Mobile Suit Gundam, which follows Camille Bidan and a new cast of characters in a post-One Year War world, with the series solidifying and becoming darker, expanding its lore and focusing in on the drama while improving its animation, with Zeta looking breathtaking at times. It came out a full 5 years after the original in 1985 and had a total of 50 episodes, and is a direct continuation, so you will miss things if you skip the original. It's not the best place to start with that in mind, although I don't think you'd be completely lost if you did start here. Camille's story will at least make sense throughout the entire narrative. Overall, being a sequel to the original, I'll give it a 1 out of 3 stars. Not somewhere you should start, but you could if you really wanted to. Its compilation movies are also a different issue entirely, with the new translation versions of Zeta having different and I think non-canon endings, so watch them after you've seen the series once, I guess, as they might contradict future Universal Century timelines and events. There's also a whole host of Zeta manga and things which I don't really have any bearing on, so if you love Zeta, I'm sure you can sniff out some cool manga related to it. Mobile Suit Double Zeta Gundam, or ZZ Gundam, is just like Zeta, where it's another direct sequel, but this time there's even more missed by not watching its prequel, to the point where I think Double Zeta is probably a really bad place to start, and I'll just give it a 0 out of 3 stars from the bat. In a similar boat is Char's Counterattack, which is a sequel to Double Zeta and also the end of the Amuro and Char saga, something you really need to watch the 3 previous series beforehand to really understand and get the most out of, in my opinion, and as much as I love this film, I don't think it's a great place to begin, so I'll give it a 0 out of 3 stars. The next mainline Gundam show would be Gundam Unicorn, a set of 7 hour-long OVAs that would come out between 2010 and 2014, taking place after Char's Counterattack. Unicorn builds on everything that came before it, especially thematically, and I think it works because of everything that came before, so it's not a great one to start with. Some people might argue that it's possible to start with Unicorn, since the cast, bar a couple of characters, are pretty much original, and there is a strong story there. Still, I'd recommend to save it until you've at least gone through the original 3 series and Char's Counterattack, and for that I'll give it a 1 out of 3 stars. Mobile Suit Gundam Narrative adapts the final novel of Gundam Unicorn Phoenix Hunting and kind of relies on the previous material, so it's definitely not a good starting point, 0 out of 3 stars. As popular as Hathaway's Flash has been since its release, I'd probably dissuade people from starting with it, namely because Hathaway is an established character in other Gundam media, and it has strong links to Char's Counterattack thematically. This one is another 0 out of 3 stars from me. Next, we move on to late Universal Century, starting with the 1991 movie Gundam F91, originally penned as another starting point for Gundam, being set 30 years after Char's Counterattack. It doesn't share strong connections with the media that preceded it, so you can watch it standalone without having watched anything else. That being said, F91 is a bit of a mess. It's an entire Gundam series crammed into a movie effectively, which non-Gundam fans might not find very satisfying. So I'd recommend you get familiar with the series and its tropes and plot beats before you watch this movie so you can appreciate it a lot more. As such, I'm gonna give it 1 out of 3 stars. Another 30 years later in the Universal Century timeline, we would see 1993's Gundam Victory, spanning 51 episodes. Victory, like F91, is far removed from the rest of the Universal Century, so you could watch it stand alone. The big caveat being Victory Gundam is... and my biases are gonna come through here, very weird and not very good. It's personally not something I'd recommend to anyone, never mind as your first Gundam series. Die-hard fans of Victory Gundam might disagree though, but I think it's a bit insane, and I'd probably avoid Victory if you haven't seen any Gundam previously, although I will give it the benefit of the doubt and give it at least 1 out of 3 stars. G-Savior is a live-action Gundam movie created in the West in 1999, taking place almost 100 years after Victory, with no connections to anything as far as I'm aware. Also, by that description, it's not really what you typically expect when you think of Gundam, so it's also something I don't recommend being your first experience with the franchise. This one is another 0 out of 3 stars. And now we have technically an AU, but also technically a future Universal Century show set in the Regulid Century, Gundam Reconquista in G, a 26 episode series that came out in 2014 to a very mixed audience. It's one of the Gundam shows I still have yet to watch, but it sits in a weird space. I think it might be okay to watch it as your first, as it's not too connected to anything else, but it's a very odd series from my understanding, so it might not be the best one to begin with. If you're dead set on it, the 5 movies it's split into might be a better version, as I've heard people enjoying them a bit more. Tentatively, I'll give G-Reco a 1 out of 3 stars. And with that, we're done with the main shows of the Universal Century, although we have a ton of side stuff and OVAs left to cover. War in the Pocket is Gundam's first OVA. It's 6 episodes long and released in 1989. This is actually one I'd recommend for people who want to get into Gundam but are a bit scared of the series' lengths, especially the original. War in the Pocket has links to the Universal Century, predominantly with the first series, but it introduces topics like the Federation, Zeon, and colonies in a way that I think new viewers will understand and enjoy. The story is also one of the best in Gundam, and like Endless Waltz, it's Christmas themed if you'd like to watch it around the holiday season. The main reason for not starting here though is some of its ideas and themes are much better appreciated if you have some familiarity with the franchise as a whole, but I don't think that will hinder your enjoyment. I'd recommend War in the Pocket if you'd like to start your Gundam journey with something shorter, so it gets a 3 out of 3 stars. Stardust Memory is another OVA but with 13 episodes, and it came out in 1991. Unlike War in the Pocket, I think it's best to have at least watched the original Gundam and probably Zeta 2, as it aims to connect the two a bit and might be confusing otherwise. The cast is self-contained though, and there is a little story here to be enjoyed. Plus, if you like the idea of Top Gun Gundam, you might be tempted to start here, but you'd have to be really into that idea, otherwise I'd say watch 79 and Zeta first. This is a 1 out of 3 stars for me. The 8th MS team began in 1996 and spanned 12 episodes, it being one of Gundam's famous old OVAs and often a series people point to as being a decent first one to check out, and I'd mostly agree. You could enjoy the 8th MS team without much prior knowledge of the Universal Century, and it could act as a great gateway to get into the series. Tonally though, I think it's very different from most Gundam series, adopting the aesthetics and trappings of action films. Notably, people seem to call it the Vietnam War Gundam due to its earlier episodes focusing on guerrilla jungle combat. The 8th MS team is a decent place to start, especially if you want something smaller or the promise of great animation and action is a big draw for you, so so I'll give it a 2 out of 3 stars, as I don't think it accurately portrays other aspects of Gundam that are appealing and important to the franchise. MS Igloo is a set of 3 short 3D series following the perspectives of the One-Year War from Zeon weapon designers. It's definitely not something I'd recommend for first timers, as it's something made for big fans of the series and you might be put off by the 3D animation. It's neat but not for beginners, so I'm gonna give it a 0 out of 3 stars for all of the MS Igloo series. Despite having Origin in its name, the Origin is something debated a lot if it's a good place to start, it being more of a prequel to the original series focusing on its main antagonist. Its 6 OVAs are about an hour each, or they are split into 13 episodes of 25 minutes or so, with most saying the OVAs are better, like Unicorn. I've yet to watch the Origin, but apparently it can spoil later events, so I'm reluctant to recommend it for first time viewers, and even if you love the idea of Char, I'd probably recommend watching at least the first original series before you tackle the Origin. So I'll tentatively give it a 1 out of 3 stars, as it could potentially be a gateway for someone to get into the early Universal Century. Gundam Thunderbolt is one of the newer OVA series adapted from the manga with the same name, coming out in 2015 originally and having 4 episodes with another 4 later on, making for a total of 8, or, and what seems to be the better option, is the 2 movies, Gundam Thunderbolt December Sky and Gundam Thunderbolt Bandit Flower. Thunderbolt, while taking place in an alternate Universal Century, doesn't rely too heavily on anything set up beforehand, and being one of the shorter series, it might be a good place to get you started with the franchise. If you like the idea of a grittier and more militaristic Gundam, Thunderbolt might appeal to you, as well as if you like the sound of a Gundam full of music, especially jazz, or one that explores an interesting setting or ideas like paraplegic soldiers. For these ideas, I'd give it a 2 out of 3 stars. It also has a still ongoing manga adaptation if you want more from its story that's even officially licensed and available in English. I'll leave a link to the Viz version in the description. Twilight Axis is a short 26-minute total OVA series that came out in 2017. I even made a video about it, which you can check out after this one. Although it's a series I think you need to have watched a lot of Gundam to really get anything out of, at least the 79 through Unicorn pipeline. It really isn't a great place to start, and I'll give it a 0 out of 3 stars. Dawn's Island is a remake movie of an infamous Gundam episode that series creator Yoshiyuki Tomino was displeased with and wanted to remove from the original run. So it's more of a movie for fans of Gundam, rather than a good entry point for new ones, as it's smack dab in the middle of the OG series. This one's another 0 out of 3 stars. And that's all the main anime content for Gundam covered. There are a few small side things like Ring of Gundam and Gundam Evolve, but they aren't very substantial and definitely not good places to start. I do quickly want to mention a few more things before we wrap up, however. First is manga. There's a lot of Gundam manga, so much of it is untranslated though and probably will never be, but there are a few popular things out there that are possibly worth reading, although I wouldn't recommend them as your first entry into the series. I just want to make you aware that they exist. Also, a disclaimer, this is by far not a comprehensive list of Gundam manga, just a few things I've read that you might be interested in. Firstly, there's Crossbone Gundam, bridging the gap between F91 and Victory, following a new main character as well as the protagonists of F91, giving them a lot more character development. If you want to read Crossbone and its many sequels, all you really need to have watched is F91. Overall, it's a fun space pirate themed adventure that fills in the late Universal Century, with me having read the original series and not its sequels yet, but many people love them a great deal. It's also something a lot of people want to see animated, and I hope it does one day, as it's a really fun story. Gundam the Origin, not the anime, the manga, isn't just a direct manga adaptation of the Origin, but it also includes the original 79 series, making things a little confusing, with so much Gundam media being titled the Origin. It has some gorgeous artwork by Yoshikazu Yasuhiko, the original character designer behind Gundam, and might be a good place to start if you love manga but still want to get into Gundam. Char's deleted affair bridges the gap between Gundam 79 and Zeta, showing us what he did during the two shows and how he became Quattro Bajeena. It's an interesting read, very dialogue heavy and very Char centric, to the point where I'd probably recommend it only for die-hard Gundam fans who really like Char or the political aspects of the series. There's also Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack Beltorchika's Children, a manga adaptation of the novel by Yoshiyuki Tomino, which from my understanding is an alternate retelling of Char's Counterattack. It recently got an official English release by Denpa Books, and people usually praise it from my understanding, so it might be worth checking out. I also mentioned Gunpla earlier, something inseparable from Gundam, as the anime were and still are made to sell model kits. It might sound nerdy or too technical to you, but I assure you it's a really fun hobby and the barrier to entry isn't very high, with a lot of kits costing less than £20 for me in the UK, and I've gotten a few of them for less than 10. You might even be able to get them even cheaper depending on your region too. You will need to buy some tools as well, a pair of nippers or side cutters, a craft knife, tweezers maybe, some sandpapers or boards, but most of these things can be bought cheaply online or in a local hobby store. There are also a lot of guides online on websites or just on YouTube videos on how to build Gunpla, and they're very friendly for beginners. When I made my first, I followed one by Zaku Aurelius, and I'll link the video in question in the description, but there's a ton of helpful resources out there to get you started if you take a quick look. For what you want to build, maybe just pick your favorite mobile suit or one that looks nice. The 1:144 scale are the most common and usually are referred as high grades, with some kits specifically designed for beginners being labeled as entry grade. Look around and you'll find something simple that will be easy for you to build. And if all else fails, you can try the entry grade RX-78, which I'm sure is super beginner friendly, as it's the original Gundam and aimed for beginner builders. So now that we're done with all the supplementary stuff, I'm just going to recap the main shows I recommend for beginners, and those are Mobile Suit Gundam The Witch from Mercury, Mobile Suit Gundam 00, Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans, Mobile Suit Gundam 79, Mobile Suit Gundam 008 War in the Pocket. I think these 5 are maybe the best starting points and ones I'd recommend first and foremost, but the other shows that I rank 2 stars are also worth considering, which are Mobile Fighter G Gundam, New Mobile Report Gundam Wing, Mobile Suit Gundam Seed, Mobile Suit Gundam Age, Gundam Build Divers, Gundam Build Fighters, After War Gundam X, Mobile Suit Gundam Thunderbolt, and Mobile Suit Gundam The 8MS Team. These are also okay starting points where you won't lose much if anything if you start here first. The rest of the shows I marked as 1 or 0 stars out of 3 I don't recommend beginning with, especially those with 0 stars, but by all means, if I've somehow intrigued you or someone else has, go ahead and take a look. There's no right way to get into Gundam. This video is just meant to help you decide where you might like to begin with Gundam and inform you about the various timelines, alternate universes, and supplementary material tied to some of these anime. Hopefully now you know where you want to start and can enjoy Gundam. And if you've made it this far, thank you for watching. A few people have asked for this, so I really hope it helped, and if you're just a Gundam fan looking for more things to watch, or are just here to hear my opinion on some of the series, I have a few videos on Gundam here on my channel, where I mostly delve into the themes of the franchise, one of which is primarily focused on The Witch from Mercury, which I recommend if you finish that series. Let me know if you'd like to see more Gundam videos, and consider joining the Discord if you'd like to talk more about Gundam. The link will be in the description. Again, thank you so much for watching, remember to be kind to each other, and take care.